This episode of JJ Meets World is brought to you by Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. Listen, folks, Natalie's got a great track record when it comes to selling homes. On average, she's moving homes for $4,000 or more above the list price, plus she's selling homes in less than the market average. What does that mean for you? It means you don't have to keep your house clean all the time if you're selling it. If you're a buyer, no one wants to wait around for a year, 2 years to find the perfect home. Natalie is going to work her tail off to make sure that she finds you the right home at the right price, and she's going to represent you through the entire buying process. So it's kind of like holding a hand to get across the street. Natalie is going to be that Girl Scout who grabs your hand, pushes the walk button, gets you across the street, and then points you down the street to where you need to go. If you're selling a home, Natalie is an amazing person to represent you. She's going to keep you top of mind on all these search engines, all the stuff that you have to worry about. Don't worry. Natalie's going to take on that headache. You don't have to deal with it. So get a hold of Natalie today, because on average, she sells a home every 3.74 days. That's 2 homes a week. Sometimes Natalie's selling enough property to make you think that she's an entire team herself. But no, she is the Wonder Woman of local real estate agents. Natalie Deutsch, 701-388-9338. You can also get a hold of her via email, Natalie, Natalie, at hatchrealtyfm.com. Or you can go to the Hatch Realty website, livefargomorehead.com. That is livefargomorehead.com. And hey, start packing. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night, podcast listener. Whenever you're consuming this podcast, you've chosen a very interesting episode with Mr. George Ellis, the commissioner of the Computer Baseball League. It is fantasy football for baseball on a computer. I had a computer like this that I could only play Reader Rabbit, and if you played that game, you and I are now best friends. Plus, I tell Tucker what I really think about the movie Fargo and the reputation it has given to the upper Midwest. So, folks, you're already listening. Enjoy the rest of this episode. It's JJ Meets World.
1, 2, 3, 4. JJ Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. JJ has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
I was given a little tiny spoon today at an event. It's a little wooden spoon. I judged a hot dish competition, not a casserole, hot dish competition. In our neck of the woods here in Fargo, now people listening to this in Fargo and the surrounding areas know what a hot dish is, but for our listeners in New York State, West Virginia, California, Utah, Texas, Kansas, Arkansas, South Carolina, Vermont, Rhode Island, the District of Columbia, etc., etc., etc. You call it a casserole, which essentially is a baking dish that contains the entire meal itself. We call it hot dish because it's a hot food served out of a dish. Now, you probably call that dish a pan. We call it a baking dish here. And I bring this up because a couple of people have commented to me about how one of the reasons they enjoy this podcast is because we sound so simple in how we describe things in our lives here. I don't care for that. I know you meant it as a compliment, but I did not take it as one.
Real salt of the earth people.
Real
right?
salt of the earth. This is real America.
You know what? I'm actually sitting here in awe right now. For a locally produced Fargo-based podcast, it took us 95 episodes to get to an intro where we're talking about the whole hot dish or casserole
I know
thing.
And here's the thing. I didn't think we ever had to bring that up because I don't feel like that is what defines who I am. But like I said, I've had some people who told me they listen to this cute little Midwest podcast waiting for me to say you betcha. And I'm tired of it. It's like, do you listen to a podcast with people in New Jersey and you want to be like, oh, hold on, we got to, get some wise guys in here and knock over a friggin' Circle K. No, that's not the way we operate here. But that being said, anybody who's ever been offended by the movie Fargo and like, that's not really what it's like.
Right.
You haven't seen that movie because that is exactly what it's like.
Right.
The conversation that takes place at the end of a driveway while one person's shoveling and it's, well, yeah, I saw him over there, and that is exactly what it is like.
I agree.
Here.
I agree.
And I love it. We should lean into it a little bit more as like a region.
Right. Well,
and have like
at the same time, I kind of feel like we have leaned into Fargo the movie a bit over the past. I mean, we've got like a day for it. We've got a statue of Margie.
Yeah, but
Margie.
But remember, people outside of the area gave us.
It's named after this town. Yeah. I mean, we're leaning into it pretty hard as it is.
Well,
if anything,
we didn't name the town after the movie.
In fact, I think we could lean back a bit.
Okay.
I think we could stop patting ourselves on the back for the fact that a really
1997 was a great year at the Oscars, wasn't it?
Is named after the town we live in, which it barely even takes place in.
Are you saying that Miller's Creek anywhere in the United States doesn't lean into their Coen brothers?
I'm not saying they don't. I'm saying I'd be surprised if they did it more than we do.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, to each his own. To each his own, right? It doesn't get more Midwestern though than a gentleman who is every single year putting in hours upon hours upon hours of work to keep a 1980s DOS-based computer game going.
I love this episode.
Today's episode is great. George Ellis is our guest. George Ellis used to be the sports information director at NDSU, and we get into what that title exactly means. But he also is the commissioner of the CBL, the Computer Baseball League. And what it is, it's an old video game program that was on computers back in the day, like when a floppy disk was actually, like 5 inches tall,
right.
Like a really huge disc.
I want to say the first edition of this particular game came out between 85 and 87 at some point.
So we're talking a 30-year plus,
right?
Because this is the 32nd year of the CBL
right.
at the time of this recording.
Right.
Every year, George goes in and updates the stats and adds the players so it's current. You're not playing only with 1980s ball players. You're playing with today's ball players on their team. You draft them like fantasy football.
Yep.
And every Wednesday night, they get together in George's basement.
Yeah, there's about 10 of them, he said.
And you get to see how these games play out.
And, each one of them, they take turns bringing in the meals. So when the hot dish comes.
After we recorded this episode, I talked to some of the people George mentions who are in the CBL, and they light up like a pinball machine. I am amazed at how dedicated these people are and how much thought they put into their yearly drafts.
Well, I mean, you play a regular Dungeons and Dragons game.
Correct.
I mean, that's effectively the same thing. It's a simulation game. It's a strategy simulation game. And in this particular instance, instead of elves and dwarves and bards, there's pitchers and catchers, and you are the general manager of your team. So, yeah, I was really looking forward to talking with George. I actually found the story. I actually talked about it a bit in the podcast. So I've wanted to meet George for a while, and I'm really glad that I did. And I had so much fun starting the day talking with him.
So listen, okay, everybody, just sit back, relax. Maybe if you're listening to this out on the boat, or maybe you're in an ice house, wherever you are, and just enjoy this episode of JJ Meets World. You betcha.
JJ Meets World.
Let's get right into this thing and tell people about the Computer Baseball League.
Well, pleasure to be here, number one. And this is a kind of a deal that we started about, this is our 32nd year. And we've had over 60 different people be members of our league. It's a kind of a fun deal. You get together and we have a computer set up. My wife has helped build some stadiums we have at my house. We've got a big wall of where our computers sit and all kinds of memorabilia and everything. And we have 3 or 4, depending upon what the situation is. Sometimes we have 4 computers up and going. We have guys come in. There's 10 guys right now that are in the league. We've had as many as 16 in the season. And what we do is every Wednesday night is we have a bunch of guys come to my house. We have a set of games that go at 6:30 in the evening, and it takes about an hour and a half maybe to play the games. It depends if you get Jack Michaels doing the games, they're quick because he's just pushing buttons like crazy. And it's a fun league. We have dinners. Everybody during the season has to cook twice, bring dinner. Okay. So we do that, and then at 8 o'clock, another set of series are being played. We play 3 games at a time. And what you do is you play it on the computer. You have we've had a draft, and I've got all the computer information stats put in for each of the individual players, and we draft major league players.
Okay.
So they're all in there, and it's not a hand-eye coordination deal. It's strategy.
Right.
It's
you're all basically playing the role of managers.
Right. It's like I was the head baseball coach at North Dakota State.
Okay.
So I can't play for the players, but I can flash the signs and tell them what I want them to do, and I can position them on defense where we want them, and different things like that. I can flash hit and run if I want to hit and run, or whatever I want to do. You do the same thing here. It's like being a manager of a baseball team. You can't play for them, but you can put them in the right positions. So that's what happens. The computer plays it out for you. You get a 1 code, 1 button, or a 3-button code. You can do. I try to mix it up a little bit so if somebody's watching somebody's fingers on the keyboard,
they can't necessarily pick up what all the codes are.
Can't pick up what's happening. So it's a 1 or a 3-digit code, and you put it in. Your opponent puts his in. If you're on offense, he puts his defense in, and the game plays it out for you on the screen. Huh. And you only get usually one key for an at bat. So, it's not like we're not going pitch by pitch. Some of the early versions of the game had that, where you could go, 3 or 4 times in the game, you could go pitch by pitch, and that was kind of fun. But as the program evolved, different things disappeared and other things came in. The last version of this game, I think, was in 1992. So I've been.
What's the name of the software? It's
Micro League Baseball.
Micro League Baseball. Who made the game? Remember the name?
I can't remember who. I don't
I'll look
have
it up
the
here
box
really quick. I had actually.
You can get some of them on, off the internet. You can buy the game. It's no longer produced.
So, did you get into this right away in the mid 1980s when this game first came out?
88. We got the first version.
So you've been doing this for 31 years.
This is our 32nd year.
Oh man, holy cats! I can't think of anything that I know that people have stayed passionate about for this long.
I mean, I remember hearing about how long is your Dungeons and Dragons campaign been going on?
4 years.
4 years, and to me that was amazing.
I know.
Thought, whoa, 4 years? That's crazy.
Yeah, and
32 years is fantastic.
Well, and they do all the work for me with D&D. They send me the books, and all I've got to do is roll some dice. You're reprogramming games, game essentially.
Oh, yeah, I spend about 80 hours during our season will end here at the 1st of April, and it'll be 80 hours that I'll put in doing everything, get ready for the draft, and we usually hold that in September, and then we start games the latter part of September, and we go all winter long. And it's 23 weeks that we play in the winter, and then we have the World Series, the playoffs, and the World Series, and they have a big party at my house. at the end of the season.
So it's got some similar roots to like a fantasy football, but you've got more control over this. You're not just a spectator.
Right.
You've got an active participation point in this as well.
Absolutely.
This is blowing my mind, George. Okay, so you've got people put together. Are they fictional teams? Are they playing real teams?
We draft.
Yeah.
In other words, I'm the Cincinnati Reds. I've been a Reds fan since I was a little kid, and I could listen to the ball games back when I was, lived in Iowa.
I think you're the first Cincinnati Reds fan I've ever met.
Anyway, so we take all the major league players, and I input all their stats, both against lefties and righties and everything, and the whole breakdown is put into the computer, and I do that myself. That's where it takes the 80 hours, and then the players, I put out a draft sheet that gives position by position and their stats and everything, and I distribute that to all the people that are going to be involved in the league, and then they use that information for the draft day, and we draft. Each team gets to draft 30 players. You get 25 on your active list and 5 in your minors, and the first opening day you have to play with your first 25. And then after that, you can call people up and down. You can make trades with the guys. We have the first 16 weeks you're locked in, or you can do whatever you want. You can go get free agents that are that weren't drafted, or you can trade. But at week 16 at midnight, after games of week 16, trading deadline, trade is over. You're locked in for the rest of the season with what you have.
Got it. So I want to kind of step back for a second and talk just how we found you and got you into the show here. So a coworker of mine is this guy named Hayden Goethe. Shout out to Hayden, who used to work at the Forum. And one day I'm talking to him, and I'm like, yeah, there was this one article I read once about this guy who runs this baseball league off of old computer software. And I've always been trying to find that article again. And he goes, yeah, I wrote that article, which kind of blew my mind and told me more about you. And then we reached out to you. So what is it about that particular software that you really like to latch onto? Because a lot of people out there, especially people of my generation, who are used to replacing software with the newest thing constantly over time. What is it about MicroLeague that made you go, no, I'm sticking with this, and I like reprogramming this and going through that process?
Well, as I said, we've had several different versions. The first version was very minimal in terms of what happened, and they evolved. So about four or five versions in is what the final product is.
Okay.
And I don't know, we just like it because of you can see the action being played out on the field after you put your codes in, and it feels more like a real game. We got all the stadiums over the years. We got some old-time stadiums as well, and you can choose any of those stadiums to play in.
Does it change graphically, the look on the screen?
Oh, yeah.
Which stadium you're in?
Okay. Absolutely.
Very cool.
Yeah, and very, colorful, very, very neat.
Right.
So do you have to use can you use a modern computer, or are you using old computers to run the
old
stuff?
computers to run the stuff.
Yeah,
So
awesome.
what happens if, one of the computers goes kaput?
Yeah, that happened.
Oh, yeah. Do you have
Actually, two of them have gone down, but I've been able to. I had about 5 computers to start with, and I've lost a couple, and I've gained one back, and I got another one that an old one that my son gave me, and I haven't hooked that one up yet and got that one ready to go, but I will. So
If you got some old computers out there, hook George up. He needs to kind of fill up his supply.
It runs on DOS.
Okay.
So
Oh, I love that. I miss using DOS because that's how I'd play Wolfenstein and Doom and
Carmen Sandiego for
Carmen
me.
Sandiego. Scorched Earth.
So with something like this, it's got to be at least slightly difficult because there's nobody left to give tech support on anything like this, right?
No, there isn't. And there's a few things on the game that I wish we could change. I know somebody had talked to the people before they sold the product to another company and then they discontinued it. Just buying out the competition, I guess, is what's called. So they were a little bit amazed that we were doing this. And when I was at North Dakota State, I was able to utilize their computers and stuff like that. And I was also the director of the North Central Conference Information Bureau. When that league was in effect, it's obviously no longer. It's been disbanded, although it's all coming back together in the Summit League now since Omaha's joined, and South Dakota State, and North Dakota State, and Augustana looks like they're going to try to get into it. So virtually everybody in the old North Central Conference is coming back together. But I was the information guy, and I had software, Lotus package, Lotus 123, and that's what we use for compiling stats. And as you see in there, we put out a 40-page newsletter every week.
Yeah, it's amazing. There's a lot of, and I'm just thinking, you went from a time when you were probably printing this on the paper that had like the feeder dots on the side to now, and nowadays you've got more modern printers. So have you been reached, or has anyone from like the original game development reached out to you at all?
Yeah, nobody has, and I don't know how to get a hold of them. I wish I did, because there were a couple of different things I'd like to change on the deal. When they came to the last development, they dropped a deal where you'd have pass balls and wild pitches and balks, and they dropped that because they wanted to add more graphic stuff in there, and they needed more space for it. So we lost that. Okay. But I wish there was a way we could get some of that stuff back.
Right. Well, let's. You clearly love baseball, so I'm really curious as to what got you into baseball. I'm assuming you were a kid when you first got into it. That typically is the story. Someone gets into that game when they're a kid. Do you remember your first game you went to, or some early baseball memories?
Well, one of the things was when I was a kid, we used to have a lot of kids in my neighborhood in Iowa, in Sioux City, Iowa, and so I used to have spinner baseball. If you remember that,
I don't.
It's it's a deal where they had all the players, and they had a circular card that you'd put in, and it had. I've got the game at home still.
Oh, and I'm starting to. I can see what you're talking about. Yep.
And if we landed on a number 1 on this card, that was a home run. And there were singles, and there were outs, and everything else like that. So I used to have the whole neighborhood come in, and we used to play. We had leagues and everything. We'd sit on the summertime. We'd sit on the front porch, and we'd play spinner baseball.
Wow.
So that's kind of the way we got started. And then I went on and played a little baseball in Babe Ruth, and didn't play in college. I was a wrestler in college, but had a great love for baseball, and I was, always involved in some way. So that's kind of the way I got started. And then I came up to North Dakota State and as the sports information director, and for 30 years. And after about must have been about 79. They had a 2-17 season or something like that, and they didn't get to play a lot of games. And the coach was a graduate assistant Actually, he was a graduate assistant, but he became the full-time assistant coach for basketball. And so Rolf Copperud. And so Rolf, it was tough for him. They didn't get to practice in the springtime because he had to be on the road with going recruiting basketball players and everything. So I went into the athletic director and I told Dr. Sponberg, I said I'd be willing to take the team over. So I was the head coach at North Dakota State for 5 years and was the all-time winningest coach at North Dakota State when I left after 5 years. I stayed at the university in my role. I was doing a double duty, and kind of as a volunteer head coach at North Dakota State, and I had a good assistant coach, and we were able to do a lot of good things. I also have to mention I was also had the most losses in school history too. So when I left, so it's kind of
isn't there sort of a? I mean, maybe it's slightly apocryphal. Babe Ruth, had a massive amount of home runs, but he also had a massive amount of strikeouts just because he was taking swings all the time.
You bet.
You had to be able to be that. So, I mean, obviously you not just had a love for baseball, but you had a love for simulation and stats, it seems like, early on.
I know. I remember coming back from a Texas trip with our baseball team, and I was the head coach, and my assistant coach sitting next to me, he took over after me for the next 8 years. So we had a kind of a good combination together. But I remember saying to him, I can hardly wait to get back because I can do these stats, and he says, what? He said, I says, that's kind of the fun part of it all.
Well, and baseball is one of those games too where the stats really matter. Do you see the movie Moneyball?
Yeah.
Yeah. I watched the movie Moneyball and I think, holy moly, these guys are looking for consistency. They're not looking for someone who's going to go up there and make some waves, for a couple of news cycles. They're looking for people who are going to consistently play the game the way it is, and that's where you get the stats tell that story.
Yeah, Oakland, the Oakland A's are kind of famous for that with the stats, and that's kind of how Billy Beane started it all out, and that type of thing.
Was it Nate Silver who was doing that with them too? That was the statistician.
I think so. Yeah,
it was based off of him as well. Okay, sorry. Continue.
No, so that was kind of the deal. I mean, baseball is unique in the things that happen. The breakdown stats wise and everything. I mean, you can do different things and compare different eras and everything else like that, but the stats are just compelling.
Mm-hmm.
So when you are looking at drafting, so when you do your draft, what are you looking for when you're considering things for the CBL, the Computer Baseball League?
I think I put in that package there. There's a probably in the back cover.
George, you can't see it, but George has brought 2 binders chock full of stats.
He's the most prepared guest we've ever had.
But there's a sheet in there. It kind of gives you a little bit of a idea of how we draft, and I do a little ranking going into the draft, rank like the top 25 players at each position. Top 25 starting pitchers, top 25 relievers, middle relievers, and the top 25 closers. And so with all those items in, I give a whole package like that to everybody that's in the league. And they can look at that and they can throw it out because I've only won 2 titles, so I guess they figure I'm not exactly the smartest one in the group. But I give it to them as a guide as to what they can look at. And some people use it, and some people would rather figure out their own stuff. But it's there for them to look at, and that's kind of what we base our drafting on.
So let me ask you this. Did you ever have people request they'd like to have players from all different eras?
Oh, we've talked
putting
a little,
into this.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about it, and I've got a lot of the old-time teams, all-time great teams, and some of and I've got a list of all the all-star players over the years of Babe Ruth, the 27 Yankees, the 87 Twins, different things like that. I mean, I could make them, but they were part of the package when we bought it. So we have those. We haven't mixed the eras like that.
Everyone's going to be like, no, I want Roger Maris this year. No, I want Roger Maris this year.
What about people who come at this thing and get addicted to it? Because I bet you've got a lot of people who stop by, who just want to check it out for the first time, and before they know it, they're in their 5th season, and they're coming at you, and they're like, because you're the commissioner, right? You consider yourself the commissioner of the CBL, which is awesome, by the way.
Commish.
But you must get some people who are passionate about this.
Yeah, we do. Got one guy, a story he likes to tell, but is we're having a trading deadline week 16, so at midnight you can't trade anymore. You can't pick up new players. And so his wife's having a baby.
Man, I love this story already.
She has the baby, and then he says, I got to go to the CBL. He says, I just got to stop by for a minute. And but he's gone all night, and then she calls him and chews him out right there when he's at the CBL. And, you're supposed to be back here with me instead of.
So, like, on those nights, like, do trades and everything have to happen when you're all together? So,
no.
Are you hosting people like until midnight on that on that 16th week?
Oh, sometimes.
Yeah,
it gets that way sometimes. But yeah, a lot of people. Everybody's got everybody's information, contact information. So they, during the whole 16 weeks that you can trade, a lot of people are talking and sending messages to each other and just trying to work out trades. So there's trades going on all year long.
Are there rules on trades? Can they involve okay, well, I'll trade you this player and I'll give you a pot roast in real life?
No, it's just player for player. Sometimes we shake our heads a little bit and say, why did you make that trade? But we don't overrule any trades or anything else like that. If they want to make them, they make them.
What's your win percentage? Just you, since you would be probably, are you the only person who's been in this league constantly since the founding of it?
I'm the final charter member.
Okay, so what is your win percentage over the years and of winning the World Series, the league?
You have to make me look.
I'm gonna have to make you look. Yeah, he pulls out the CBL history book.
And so, does it culminate in a World Series?
Yes, it does.
And so that's got to be exciting.
In playoffs and a World Series. Geez, coming into this season, I had a 528 winning percentage. So, not too bad.
No. I know a lot of people who would be just happy and dandy with that. I want to switch over just quickly from the CBL to talk about your time at NDSU a little bit.
Sure.
That's such North Dakota State is such an interesting story and where it started and where it's at today. Obviously, football has become the thing that everyone likes to talk about, and I know plenty of people who went to MSUM and Concordia who now have Bison gear because they want to participate on those Saturdays. But I look at baseball, basketball, even golf. NDSU's athletic program is just amazing, and it didn't just happen overnight. The people who put their blood, sweat, and tears and belief into that program over the last 40 years have really built up something. And I noticed that they're not the ones who are having arenas named after them. They're not people who are, having parade floats, but they're the ones who did a lot of that heavy lifting. And you probably worked with a lot of them over the years.
You bet. Long relationship. I came here in 74. and the head football coach and the head basketball coach. I was at the University of Northern Iowa, and there was a conference meeting down there that year, and the old sports information director, Del Johnson, he had heart problems, and he was being forced to step away by his medical conditions. And so he wanted me to become the sports information director to replace him. And I remember Marv Scar and Ev Gelbertson, the basketball and football coach, and they came down to those conference meetings and put me in a corner and said, we need you to come up here. And so they kind of recruited me, and I came, and I stayed for 30 years, and I saw a lot of interesting things that have happened. It's been amazing. I was one of those people that was probably a little bit concerned about the transfer, the move to Division I. I always thought that football would not have any problems. 1AA football, not a problem. North Dakota State could compete. They did compete on that level, even though they were Division II way back when I was there. We won 5 national championships in football while I was there. I got rings for those.
Nice.
And my concern was at that time was, can we compete in the other sports? Because you're talking about our track and field was one of the best programs in the nation. Our wrestling team had won 5 national championships, different things like that. You know, can those sports go on and compete at a Division I-A level? Because that's where they're going to have to compete. Basketball has to compete with UCLA. They have to compete with Duke. Same way wrestling has to compete with Iowa, Iowa State, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State. Those big wrestling programs. And the whole thing, that was a concern. Well, most of those concerns have been put to the wayside now because they're doing a wonderful job at North Dakota State since I left. I left in 2004.
Irv Vinegar was just one of the nicest people I ever met in my entire life. And he's one of those guys who I feel like had a real belief in sports make you a better person, and like the things that you learn during that time. I am amazed at what NDSU has been able to do over the years. I remember going to games in the Dome in the early 2000s, and you couldn't give away a ticket, at that time to get into, an NDSU game. And nowadays, you can't find a ticket to get in there. I bet you've got a good hookup, though. Anytime you want to go to a football game, somebody who can get you a ticket.
Well, actually, sports information director now for, the women's sports information director was Jeff Schwartz, and Jeff's still there. And Ryan Peralt was my grad assistant when I left, and he took over the position.
Can you? I'm not a sports guy, but I am a super nerd, which is why this is scratching an itch for me. But can you kind of fill out for me what a sports information director does? Like, what is the purview of that role?
A difficult role. It's gotten more difficult in the years since I've left because of technology that's been involved in all the things that they've got to do. But when I was there, obviously, there was things like press releases, game programs. We used to produce a 140-page game program for every home football game and a 50-page or 48-page program for basketball, different things like that. So you had to do those things. It's game site management. You're in charge of statistics. You're in charge of making sure you've got a stats crew, and you make all the calls in terms of like at a football game. I would have an internal mic in the stadium, and every call is made by me. And any decisions or discussions or anything that needs to be, like, where's the ball marked at?
Okay.
How many yards were gained on this? Different things like that. So you're the host.
Got it.
And you make sure that everybody's taken care of, whether it be visiting media or your media, all those different things at a event site. So you're in charge of all that. I suppose, a lot of different projects that need to be taken care of. I know when the Fargo Dome was put together, I was on that steering committee. But one of the things that happened, we updated things in the Fargo Dome where we put banners and pictures in there, and there was a company out of Minneapolis that came up and spent weeks up here with me, and we went through all our files and everything, and we selected what we wanted to put in the dome and have on the walls I think we got like a quarter of the dome at that time. I don't know. I haven't been in the dome lately, so I don't know what they've done differently. But all kinds of different projects.
And the changes in what the Bison Sports Arena was to the Shack.
Yeah.
Now, they've made some pretty amazing leaps.
Yep.
Over the years. Can you remember an athlete who really stands out in your mind? Somebody who just embodied their sport and sportsmanship?
Oh, geez, there's so many. Different
That's
things.
a good answer, though, right?
Yeah.
Are you talking professional sports or someone you worked
I'm talking
with?
about somebody you worked with, a student at one point.
Jeff Bentram, quarterback, who was Harlan Hill winner, our first Harlan Hill winner as the nation's top player. He went on and played in the Canadian Football League, and then I was privileged to be with him in South Bend, Indiana, when he was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. So it was kind of fun. He was a terrific individual to be involved with. Just so many other different ones. Golly, I can't. Basketball's had so many great players that I had fun with and been involved with, and right on down the line. We had a pitcher when I left in 2004, was a junior and had outstanding. He was throwing 97 miles an hour, and so he ended up pitching in the major leagues as a reliever closer.
Really?
Yeah, and he was to Oakland A's, I think, and I think there was another team he pitched for, seems to me. So at that time, he was our first major league player.
Was it fun to input him into the CBL? Did he make the CBL? As a player?
He did. He
Oh,
did.
That's kind of fun.
That's pretty
You
cool.
bet. Yeah. I think, I can't remember who drafted him, but yeah, he was there. It's Stacy Robinson, who played for the New York Giants and won a couple of Super Bowls with them as a wide receiver, and he was an outstanding young man, and golly, I just really liked him. Came up as a skinny option quarterback, and coaches in their wisdom knew that he'd get killed at 160 pounds, 165 pounds, so they moved him to wide receiver, and he flourished there, and he ran 4.25. I remember we were playing at Cal Davis, and we throw a touchdown pass to him, 70 yards, and he just blew by everybody on the Cal Davis team, and the guys, the sports writers and everything in the press box, what the heck, how fast is he? And I said, 4.25, and they said, they'd never heard of anybody going running 4.25, and he was an All-American on the track field as well, and then went on and was drafted and played 5 years for the New York Giants.
Could you help sort of shed some light back onto the software itself? on how it works with, say, you have, I'm just going to say Babe Ruth just as a name, but you've got Babe Ruth, and does that player in the software then have like a percentage of successful hits, and those successful hits have this percentage to be a home run or not, and then it basically runs the numbers at any given moment to see how well they do? I mean, is that part of the strategy, or are players more or less on an even field in the game?
No, they're not on an even field.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. Percentages and strategy. That's one of the cool things about the game, because you can sit there and say, oh, this guy that at the plate hits right-handers really well, but he doesn't hit left-handers very well. And so I come in with a left-handed reliever.
Okay.
Somebody that
You're playing their stat. You're essentially playing their stats, right?
Huh.
Right.
Yeah. So, and just like any good manager would on a actual baseball team.
Absolutely.
Then when you're then entering new players, you're looking at like how they did that past year, their real world stats.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're this year right now, because we draft in September and early September, we can't use the 2018 stats. We're using the 2017 stats.
Okay.
Now our next draft will be based on the season that just ended, 2018.
Mm-hmm.
So we know a couple of mutual people who've played this, and I remember Dan Halleck telling me about this, and I think at one point he told me that he had like nothing short of like 2,000 pieces of paper at his house that were all CPL related.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me.
Killed a couple of young forests at some point, probably.
Yeah.
Who are you looking for to join this league?
We're always looking for somebody. We have, I don't like to go lower than 10, and we've had as many as 16 people. So, 12 is really nice. I'd like to have 12. That gives you 2 6-team leagues, and you got a little interleague play, and so it's kind of fun. But 10 works really well.
Yeah. Have you been approached with somebody who says like so and so knows somebody who wants to be a part of this league, and you only know them really through the computer baseball league?
Yeah, Jack Michaels just told me on Wednesday night that he knows somebody that really would be interested in playing, and he says we ought to get in touch with him. So there's one guy there that then I reach out to some of the older guys that have played and are no longer in the league, but for various reasons, and try to see if they are still interested in coming back, and because I'd like to keep, every year it seems like we lose 1 or 2 guys.
Sure.
For various reasons. Family,
life intervenes.
Yeah, I have one guy that came into the league 2 years ago, and then he had to back out last year because he had to take care of his mother. He was living with his mother, and she, her health reasons and everything. Well, she died, and I went to the funeral, and his sister come running over to me, and she says, "You got to make sure that he's in the league next year. Keep him active." So we did, and he came back, and he just loves it.
You always hear stories about how doing something like the crossword puzzle is really good just for your brain.
Yeah.
Just to keep it active and to be reading and thinking. And to me, thinking about stats and talking about stats and players and forming strategies like that, I think does that even better. I mean, I don't have baseball as a reference, but I've been a nerdy superhero kid ever since I was a little kid. And I used to collect superhero cards, and on the backs of those cards, they had stats. They would just make up, stats for, their strength level, their mental prowess. And then me and my nerdy friends, we would debate, who would win in a fight, this guy or that guy. Well, look at this stat he's got right here. This wouldn't do it. So what is it, and this is a question for both of you, what is it about having that sort of common ground discussion that you can sort of debate over something that doesn't actually exist, right? But is incredibly real and fun and engaging to deal with?
That's a good question. I think it's sort of so you're a baseball fan, and if you weren't a baseball fan, you probably wouldn't be doing this computer league. Because you're a fan, it's fun to fill that time. I mean, we're outside of the normal baseball season. Obviously, that's why you do it during this time, is so that you get baseball year round.
Right.
And so it's sort of fun. I think every good fan is at one point or another an armchair coach, right?
Yep.
Like they look
Yep.
at it and they go,
Yeah.
God, what are you doing? Like you pull them out. It's time for a relief pitcher. And now you actually get to make those decisions.
Yeah.
And then you win or lose based on the decisions you make. And so I think people really enjoy that kind of aspect of being a part of it.
You bet. It is. It's fascinating, especially when you're trying to judge yourself against somebody else's team, and for me, it's fun to be able to play somebody like Paul Molitor's on my team this year.
Okay.
And, it's just Jose Barrios from the Twins is on my team, and he leads our league in ERA right now. He's having a great season. So it's kind of fun to be able to play those people and utilize them and put them in spots and see what they can do. And it's just a fascination.
It is really cool. So do you know, did the company who made Micro League Baseball make any other sports related? Like, did they do a football version?
They did.
And did you ever have any inkling to try that out?
Jeff Schwartz at North Dakota State, we were in the same office together, and he had the football version, I do believe, if I remember right. But I never played the football portion of it. So
so you never know where a podcast is going to end up. But I really hope that one of the engineers from this original game hears it and reaches out to you, because I think that's to find out that somebody is still using something that they built 32 years ago.
Yeah.
I think is really, really amazing. And, they're probably interested in seeing where it's come to. And, a lot of video games, for lack of a better descriptor today, don't have the ability that you have with Micro League Baseball to constantly keep it updated. I mean, heck, you're creating the stadiums along with it, the ballparks themselves. And so, if I go out and buy Ken Griffey Jr. Baseball today, which I don't even know if they make that series anymore. Probably not.
No, because he does not play anymore.
He does not.
Although they still make Madden football.
Yeah, well, I mean, because John Madden was a legend.
Right.
But if I go out and buy Ken Griffey Jr. Baseball from 2002, I can't change it. I can play the games over and over, but I can't change it. It will never update. It'll never have, newer players. And so it's what you've got here is so unique, George.
Yeah, it is. It is. And that's one of the things you try to. I've looked at different games and tried to, think, would we want to get this? I bought a couple of different ones, but they don't hold the attention that you want, like this game does. This game allows you to see what's happening right now in front of you, and it allows you to make those decisions. A couple different things you'd like to see a little bit better. I'd like to be able to say, hey, if a guy's coming around third base, I'd like to be able to push a button and hold him instead of letting the computer make that decision as to whether he's going to try and score or not. And the other guy, whether the defensive guy, it'd be nice to have a button where he could push and he could say, I'm going to try and throw to second instead and let the run score, but I'm going to try and get that other runner. Different things like that.
Well, JJ and I both grew up with Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis. These older style game graphics are much simpler than what we have now, which is pretty hyper realistic now. But part of the charm of those games was that, in much the same way that a book has you fill in with your own imagination and your own mind more of the action that's going on. I watched a video of the graphics from Micro League, and they're DOS 1985 style graphics, but they're just enough to give you a basis of knowing what's going on, but then your imagination kind of fills in the gaps. And I actually enjoy that a lot more than a lot of the games now, where it just everything is there for you and it's sensory overload.
Yeah.
I used to play Final Fantasy games on Super Nintendo, and they had no voice acting, they had no CG. It was these little sprites with text, and I loved those games because I was filling in with my imagination the action.
Are there any environmental aspects to Micro League Baseball, like
rain, snow?
I mean, do they ever, wind or anything like that, or is every day a beautiful day at the ballpark?
The first one, the first version, they had a rain delay every once in a while, and all the players would run off the field.
Oh yeah,
and then they'd pause for a couple of seconds, and then they'd all run back on and say, sunshine's back, and but. That was just the first year version. After that, that was never on there again.
That would be interesting though. Like, well, now everything's wet, so that's going to change like how well they can run from base to base, and that'd be interesting having weather.
Just in different environmental factors. There's a lot of birds today,
right? Or the ump is blind, right? Like, can you have bad? You can't really have bad umps in this game, can you?
Well, there'd be some question on that. Come to a computer baseball league night and listen to some of the guys yell and scream at the computer because it did something they didn't like.
I used to play NHL 94 and 95 on Sega Genesis, which I believe had an autoplay feature too. So you could just pit two teams against each other and then just watch them play, I believe, which I did do a lot. But because it was hockey, they kept the fights. Like, there were fights that the players could get into.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, does Micro League, do the benches ever clear? Like, is there ever like a mass mob into the center, or do you guys just do that?
In the first version, it did.
Really?
Yeah, but after that, it didn't.
See, I'm more interested in what's happening in the, in your own home. Like, do you have Jack Michaels and Kolpak, kicking the rug at each other, saying that was definitely a strike. That was definitely a strike.
I have a few holes in my ceiling from Jack Michaels where he throws the pin up and it sticks in the ceiling. We've had a few of those. But I have a rule. It's in the newsletter, but we have a rule in there that it costs you 25 cents if you swear.
Okay.
And
there's no swearing in baseball.
Jack Michael's very creative because we say that if you can do it all in one breath, you can have more than one swear word. So he puts a
bunch of them together.
For 25 cents.
That does not surprise me one iota with Jack Michaels. He's a great guy too. Isn't he
terrific.
just a great guy?
Terrific.
And funny.
Yep.
And when he makes a meal, does he bring it in his crock pot, who he's named Karen?
No.
He names his crock pot Karen?
Yeah.
He usually,
Must be some crock pot.
Oh, he and Karen definitely have a great relationship.
Yes,
she makes the best
they
pot
do.
roasts.
He usually brings chicken from someplace.
Sure.
He'll get something.
He's got those dietary restrictions.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
When Jack's coming, you're not going to have anything that's ketchup based, no tomato stuff.
And every time he comes out, if somebody forgets that Jack needs a little extra, my wife's always there ready to feed him. So he's a special person.
32 years into this, what does your wife think about this?
That's a good question. Some days she's not real happy with us, but
so I bring this up because when I get together with my friends and we'll do something like play Dungeons and Dragons, and it takes 4 hours worth of time, she is not very pleased with me at the end of it. And I think it's partially because that's just not what she likes. It's not her thing. So has your wife ever played in the league, or is this something that she's not interested in?
No, my son plays in the league. My daughter played in the league for 3 or 4 years. But no, my wife hasn't played. I've threatened to recruit her, but she hasn't. She enjoys the the comrades, comradeship, or camaraderie. That's what I'm looking for. She enjoys that because she's around. She helps a little bit in the kitchen, and everybody comes up, and we have a, like I say, the first group plays at 6:30, and about 7:45, we go upstairs, and the other group is coming, and we're all together, and we eat, and she's there, and she helps out, and she gets to chat with everybody and the whole works.
Sure. She should look at it this way. I mean, you could be at a casino instead. You could be.
I told her I could be at the bar all night on Wednesday nights.
Yeah, this is much better. So, as this goes forward, you put in a significant amount of time for this. I mean, your newsletter alone must take you quite a while to put that thing together.
Yeah, I like to have that out by Sunday night, so. I start on Wednesday night as soon as everybody's gone. I start inputting all the stats into the Lotus package and put that all together. And, then it takes, it depends upon whether I'm on the road driving for a car company here in town, a dealership, or whether I maybe have something else going on. But I try to work that through on Thursday, Friday, and Saturdays, and then finish up on Sunday, and then get that 40-page newsletter out to everybody.
So does this change? Like, you can't really vacation much during the winter, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Do you take some Wednesdays off, or are you back? You plan around being out there on Wednesdays?
We usually try to take 2 Wednesdays off over Christmas and New Year's.
Well, that's smart.
Depending how that works out, but yeah, this year it's only one. We took 1 week off, but and then when we get near the end of the season, the last 5 weeks of the season are only in your league, and there's no interleague play.
Oh, okay.
So everybody in that last 5 weeks gets 1 week off. So we stagger it. One National League, one American League team are idle this week, and there'll be 2 other teams will be idle next week, and down the line. So that's kind of the way we stagger it.
And I was actually like, excuse me, I'm looking at this sheet that's got all the champions on it, and I was compiling a number, and then I should have just read the summary up on top. It's telling me exactly what I was compiling. So your son is Josh.
Yep.
So Josh looks like is the winningest.
He's the winningest
manager.
Winningest manager. He's won more titles. I think he's won 8 titles over the 32 years.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so according to this, the 27... Yeah, you're right. No, I'm counting 7 here. Seven titles that he's won. And then he's 2 ahead of both Jim Peterson and Kyle Richardson, who each have 5.
Yep, right.
But Kyle had almost a 4-year running streak.
Yeah.
Broken up right at the beginning by Sam Martin for 1. But so, I mean, Josh, what is it about Josh? He's got the secret sauce to make him such a winning manager.
I don't know. I know one thing. He doesn't like my cheat sheets there.
Really?
My draft sheets that I put out. He rather do his own, so I let him.
Sure.
I give him the unranked sheets, and then he gets his own. So he does really well. He's sharp. He knows the game and works at it.
Well, I mean, that's pretty awesome too that he's that devoted to it, because I mean, this could be a generational thing, going forward. I mean, that would be fantastic to see the CBL make it to its 60th year or something like that.
I don't think anybody's going to put the or have the time to put into it.
You never know.
We'll see.
Have you guys ever done baseball cards for each other? Like, have you ever made custom baseball cards, like a George Ellis card as the manager?
No, I haven't. I've done baseball cards though for Fargo American Legion.
Really?
Baseball. What we've done is I used to do a banquet. We still do the banquet, but for 10 years I started it. I was on the board of directors, and we brought in like 7 Hall of Fame 7 Hall of Fame players from Major League Baseball to be our speakers over those 10 years. So when we did that, we brought in guest people from baseball from all around the region, whether it be college baseball coaches, just different people from different places. And we made baseball cards, and we had them out on the tables, when we had 300 or 400 people coming to the event. And so I had all these baseball cards for all these guests. We usually had about 40 or so guests. And so it was fun making those cards.
I think you guys should do something for the CBL. That'd be
absolutely.
fun.
Absolutely. You could have, people from past eras of the league who aren't playing now.
Sure,
They could each have a card. My dad, his side hustle has always been playing Ole at the Red Hawks, one of the mascots of the Red Hawks. And I remember him getting his first baseball card as Ole, and us thinking that was just so cool. And now you've got a strong you have a strong connection to the Red Hawks too, right? You were telling me before.
Yeah, I was the official scorer the first couple of years with the Red Hawks, and my daughter was the ticket manager for 4 years. After she got out, she went to NDSU and graduated there, and then went to UMass and got her master's degree there in sports administration. Okay. Then she worked for the Timberwolves for a couple of years in their office, in their public relations office, and then came back to Fargo and was 4 years as the ticket manager for the Red Hawks. Okay. Yep.
It's real sports information is really in your family.
It is. My wife got, I remember back when Maureen Zimmerman was with WDAY, and WDAY had our coaches show and everything, and they did little features. And so Maureen did a feature on my wife, and she was in the press box, and she typed the play-by-play, and she asked her how you got involved. She says, well, if I ever wanted to see him, I better figure out what I can do at a game. So she typed play-by-play for football and basketball all those years that I was at North Dakota State.
Oh,
and
that's
before
awesome.
that, at Northern Iowa and Morningside College.
So looking back on 32 years of CBL, it's got to be something that's pretty awesome. Like, so that first year that you got the league together, were you thinking like, well, this will just be something fun that we do once? And then someone's like, this is a lot of fun. We should do this again next year. When did it become something where you're like, okay, well, this thing's got longevity to it?
Yeah, I think somewhere along the lines, that first year was kind of a feeling out year. And I know Bucky Burgow from Concordia was with us that first year, and it was different. We didn't do quite the same way. We learned as we started out and different things that we do. So I think after the second or third year, we thought, this is pretty good. We're going to keep this going.
What happens what happens during strike years? Like, what does that do to your stats after that?
Good question. I don't remember. Did we have a strike?
I can't
during this period.
I was 5 years old when you started,
yeah.
So it'd be hard for me to remember during that.
I mean, I remember a big baseball strike in my lifetime.
Yeah.
For almost a season. I think we just lost.
Yeah,
a season.
I think we did. But I can't remember what we did with stats. Whether we.
I mean, the nice thing is you could just use the previous year's stats.
Yeah.
Again, if you needed to.
You bet. And we probably did.
I mean,
Good question, though. I don't remember.
I mean, maybe that's like, I guess we can get 3 seasons in this year since there's no baseball going on.
Do you like going to the ballparks in real life?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Any favorites?
I've seen just about every major league stadium, with the exception of probably Yankee Stadium and maybe Toronto. But, yeah, do I have a favorite? The Twin Stadium is really nice. Target Field.
Target Field
is Cleveland. I really like Cleveland Stadium. Golly, I've been to so many of them. I can't.
I mean, that's a good problem to have, to
Yeah.
not be able to remember
Yeah.
which stadium is your favorite.
And the Reds, I've been to Cincinnati. Cincinnati's had several different stadiums now. Riverfront, and now they got the new one, All-American, Great American
Right.
Ballpark. Yeah.
We've had a few former guests on the podcast, John Lamb from the Forum, Greg Carlson from Concordia, who both sort of think about in their retirement wanting to just visit as many baseball stadiums as they can. I know Greg does it now and John does it now whenever they get a chance to. And that really seems like, I know, fans of any particular sport are going to revere the places that the sports take place, Lambeau Field being, one massive one. But it really does seem like baseball has a different, place in the culture of being just a part of the DNA of so many people's upbringing.
Yeah.
That these places seem to be up on a pedestal.
Yeah, Fenway and Wrigley Field. Those places were really neat. In my profession as a sports information director, we had a convention every summer, and we'd travel all around the country, different places every year, and that was kind of neat. And so we got to go to all these ballparks, for 30-some years. I went to everywhere. I mean, we got special privileges or treatment, whatever. The Red Sox, we got to go into their back inside the scoreboard, and you got to go into the locker rooms. They'd take you up to the press box, and they'd feed you and the whole works. So we had at that time our groups were a lot smaller. 200-300, maybe 400. As it goes on now, they're getting over 1,000 at their conventions.
Wow.
So it's we used to have a lot of fun going to all these different stadiums. Whether it be football or I remember at the Boston, we went to the Boston Patriots. Yeah. Well, yeah, it was their Schaefer Stadium, I think, was when they had a big deal underneath the grandstand. They had all these pots, boiling water, and the lobsters, and they were dumping them in there.
Oh, man.
Big lobster feed for everybody. So you had that type of deal. I know we went to, in L.A., we got to go to the Rose Bowl, and they had food for us set out there. We got to go to the Tournament of Roses parade house and go through all that, and then you'd get to go and eat in the stadium at the Rose Bowl.
Favorite stadium food? What's your stadium food of choice?
Oh, geez. I don't know. I think I'd go for hamburger or pizza.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty simple.
Yeah, but you know what? It's consistent, right? That's the nice thing. That's the nice thing about it. It's good consistency. You say, I'll go with a hot dog. Well, by golly, depending on where you go, hot dogs mean different things. So like in Chicago, you go there and you don't get a Chicago dog. They look at you a little crooked. But a hamburger is a hamburger, no matter where you go.
Every Red Hawks game for me, it's brats, and it's the warmed up peanuts in the shell,
Yeah.
which I love, and then it's the fried donuts.
You know what I've never had, but I'm told is really good, are where you put the peanuts in a Coke.
What?
Never had that. Have
What
you
do
ever
you
seen
mean?
that? In the South, they take peanuts, salted peanuts, and they put it in Coca-Cola.
In the shell or just the nut itself?
Just the nuts.
Really?
Yeah. And so apparently it's huge down there.
Never even heard of that, but
Yeah.
I'm willing to give it a shot.
Yeah. And I've also boiled peanuts. Have you ever had boiled peanuts?
No. You're just making stuff up.
I'm not. I'm telling you.
You go to the Red Hawks, I like the donuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I just like watching them on the conveyor belt as it goes down and just, oof. Yeah. It's so good.
So when you go see a live baseball game, is it sort of just, is it a little slice of heaven on earth for you? Like you get to sit there and watch and...
Yeah, I find myself second guessing all
Do ya?
the time. Yeah.
What do you mean?
Why did he make that decision? Why is he doing that? You know what? I wouldn't do it that way. Different things like that. So
Does anyone run a micro league of minor league players that you know of
No.
that can graduate and get into your
No.
major league computer league?
haven't seen anything like that.
Well, George, thank you very much for your time today. We got to wrap this thing up. If someone listens to this and they're interested in getting a hold of you because they're an engineer of the game and they say like, don't worry, I can send you a new package, or they're interested in maybe joining your league, is there a way to get a hold of you?
Sure, absolutely. George ELL at msn.com is my email address.
Super.
So that's the easiest way of getting a hold of me. Otherwise, I have a telephone number too, 701-200-1939. So
All right. Go Reds.
Go Reds, Big Reds. I hope the Big Red Machine's coming back. It looks like they're making some trades and doing some things this year. Maybe they're going to get better. I hope. I buy the television package, extra innings package, so I can watch the Reds games all summer long. And for a while there, it gets really hard to do it when they play so bad.
I'm a diehard Cubs fan, and for a lot of years it was an exercise in futility to be a fan of them. So, and then they
Yeah.
finally get a good year. So, and now we expect that on the regular. But we're like, listen, once every 100 years, guys, just once every 100 years. So, George, thanks so much for being a guest on JJ Meets World.
You bet. Thank you.
A huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring this podcast. Folks, if you're looking to buy or sell a home, contact Natalie Deutsch today, because Natalie Deutsch is not only a previous podcast guest, she's somebody who's going to care enough to sell your property for top dollar. She's also going to find you the best price possible if you're purchasing a new home. Last year on average, Natalie earned her clients $4,000 over list price on their homes and sold them faster than the market average. On average, Natalie's selling a home every 3.74 days. That's 2 homes a week. Those numbers don't lie. Find out why Natalie is one of the top agents in this entire market. Get a hold of her today, Natalie at hatchrealtyfm.com. You can also call 701-388-9338 or go on to livefargomorehead.com. That's livefargomorehead.com. Read all of her amazing reviews and then listen to her episode of JJ Meets World. Thanks again to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode of JJ Meets World and would like to help us continue to produce 2 new episodes every week, you can donate to our Patreon. Check out patreon.com/JJ Meets World and donate today. Even as little as $1 a month can go a long way. Visit our website at www.jjmeetsworld.com or hit up our social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the sites the kids are using these days. If you'd like to stay up to date on new episodes of JJ Meets World, you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you consume the podcast that you love. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by checking out www.moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, go to linebenders.com, and you can find direct contact info for JJ. 120 3-ply tissues, mouchoirs, ultra softness, dependable strength. Am I reading the back of a condom or a box of Kleenex? Kleenex.